Hello again, Struck. Today I'm bringing you another build video for Torchlight 3, and this one is for the Curse Captain class and the Blood Drinker subclass. I've called it DrainDancer because it uses Drain and Dance of Death. I'm also using the cudgel, the mace, the legendary mace for Curse Captain that makes it so that Maelstrom keeps rotating and moving with us rather than standing in one place, but this also removes the vacuuming effect, so not everybody would like playing it in this way. I think visually it's one of the coolest looking builds, but DPS wise it's one of the weakest builds you can make on a cursed captain. First of all, Maelstrom is much weaker than Blunderbuss, and if you want damage you would probably go for Blunderbuss. Second of all, going for Drain and the Dance of Death is not as good as going for Bloodseekers, but the build looks amazingly cool when you have a bunch of spinning blades around you from Dance of Death, and then you have the Maelstrom spinning around you, and then you have a little blades from blades for cutting spinning around you. That's why I'm actually using blades for cutting and basic sword attacks. And it's a cool looking build. Yeah, it doesn't do as much damage as a meta build, sure, but it's good enough. It can still do content, just kind of slow. For some it could be painfully slow, for others it would be something they can tolerate in terms of how low the DPS is. Obviously you would need a good sword, and the Glacier's Edge alongside a Frostwall would be amazing. So you can reduce the cooldown of Imbue Relic, and Imbue Relic is great because you can do Dance of Death to get the spinning blades around you, then Imbue Relic to recharge Dance of Death and do another one. And that way, instead of 4, you can have 8 spinning big blades around you, alongside the Storm, alongside the small blades from the basic attacks, and during that time you can be doing things like Drain and Powder Kegs to get some extra DPS. The build is definitely not everyone's cup of tea, but if it sounds like your kind of setup, you could stay a while and listen, and the next would be the skills segment. And now we're going to talk about the skills. Which skills, at what level and why. But before we do that, you need to know I'm using the Commodore's Cape, jacket, and one more piece, in my case the Powderons. Ideally you would be using the Powderons as well, and that means I get +1 piracy skill levels. With the set it makes it +2, and the same goes for cursed, so any skill you see here or here would be with 2 levels more than what you're seeing. So this one is tier 2, 4 +2 black spot. Maelstrom is 8 +2, so it's tier 3, 10 actually. So this one is tier 3 again, 8 +2 double cross. Wraith Walk is tier 2, 4 +2, and Powder Keg is 10 +2. It means it's level 12. It means I want extra damage from those extra 2 levels I get after level 10. And yes, you will see that the damage increases. It says level 10 and it says bonus levels 2, and you would notice that the weapon damage over there will increase on certain skills once you over level them, or the cooldown if it's a skill that gets cooldown from the levels, such as this one. So you've noticed that unlike my other builds now, I don't have Dread Banner in the loadout. I could leave it up to you to decide whether you want to keep Black Spot as an active skill or Banner as an active skill. I think Black Spot is better on bosses, and that's where the damage really matters, because it gives you extra 40% damage to a target, whereas the Banner would give you 25% more damage. And I think it's better because the Banner doesn't have full uptime. It lasts for 15 seconds, and if you don't put points into it, the cooldown is not that great. Whereas this one, you can just you can keep it up at all times as long as you have this one. This gives you 10% cooldown reduction and makes it from 10-second cooldown to 9-second cooldown, and the duration is pretty decent as well, 12.4 seconds at level 6, as you can see right now for me. Pretty decent. So in the Blood Drinker side of things we have a lot of points, 36 points to be exact. 10 points into Dance of Death because we want the tier 3 bonus alongside the other bonuses on the way. Drain is maxed out, 10 points because we want all the bonuses. And then we have 5 points into Rupture and 1 point into Bot Letter. Obviously, if you don't have chance to bleed on the shield, you would want to put it there. So what you want to do is you want to go here and grab this bleeding chance. X% chance to bleed for Y base damage per second for Z seconds, this one. Not the one below it, that one. Right now I didn't use it because I have a weapon that gives me chance to bleed, which you wanna avoid. You want the bleed to come from the shield socket, because it's better to get damage, but more about that in the gear segment. So Rupture is useless if you don't have chance to bleed. And 1 point into Bot Letter is not because of the chance to bleed, it's because of the extra weapon damage of the bleeding and the extra duration of the bleeding. You get 3-second duration, you get 50% more weapon damage, which means my bleeding right now would be those 50% plus the 41%. So it's pretty nice. You can see I've got bleed damage 94%, which is this 41.7 and this 50. In fact, this 5% is also added there, but the 5% is not really what I need that much. So yeah, this 44.1 base damage is added to that 50, and the duration of those 3 seconds is added to the duration of those 3.2 seconds. Now, here's something strange that you might be wondering, wait, what's the deal with this thing? Well, this skill, it's there not for the damage, not for the basic attack damage. I'm not using the basic attacks for the damage. I'm using the basic attacks to generate energy. You see, relic energy generation while using basic attacks 25%. Add to this the other 25% general relic energy charge rate, and this gives us extra 50% relic energy charge as long as we're using basic attacks. And generating energy quicker means using Drain more often, which means using Dance of Death more often. And on top of that, since we have Imbue Relic, it adds up to a very nice setup. Obviously, don't expect much damage from this, as I mentioned at the beginning. It's not a setup that's gonna give you great damage, it's just a weird, interesting synergy that some of you might want to explore. Now, this one is maxed out, just so we can have that basic attack speed, so we can build energy quicker, while the treachery stacks are getting built. And there's one option you can do, in a moment I'm gonna talk about Legendarium, where you would put the Shark Blade instead of the Coral Cudgel if you want to have 10 treachery stacks instead of 5. So that means you would have 10 basic attacks at maximum speed rather than 5. But then you won't have the Maelstrom around you. And Maelstrom is not there for the damage. Yes, it does a little bit of extra damage and it's nice. It also slows enemies, which is nice because slowing means slowing the attack speed, not just the movement speed. So that works well for us. But Maelstrom is there to stack with the little bit of trickling damage alongside the trickling damage of Dance of Death and the trickling damage of Blades for Cutting with the procs and the trickling damage of Drain. So yeah, we don't use it for our major source of damage, but this little bit of damage with that little bit of damage and that little bit of damage and that little bit of damage just adds up. The most damagey thing in that whole build is Powder Keg. This is the only thing that's probably carrying the build in terms of damage. Double Cross is not bad, but with 5 stacks of treachery you're not gonna get much out of it, and it also has a big cooldown. Even with 10% reduction, it's still 5.4 seconds. So yeah, right now the thing that carries the build is the Powder Keg alongside stacking all the other things together. And another thing worth mentioning that could really help your damage is Rupture. It might not seem like much, but stacking a ton of enemies, like 20-30 enemies together before you start doing damage, is the way to go when you're doing a Rupture build. Rupture is AoE. The more enemies together that are bleeding, that are getting hit, the more Rupture triggers, and that means the more damage you would be doing to those enemies in a small area. So if you've noticed in the video footage that I'm showing throughout that whole video, when I group up a lot of enemies, I kill them much quicker than when I'm fighting 3, 4, 5 enemies at a time. So keep that in mind. So I think this pretty much sums it up. Wraith Walk we only take for the tier 2 bonus and tier 1 bonus for extra charge. It's our mobility skill. This one is for the tier 2 bonus with damage to relic skills, really needed. And I love that that extra 40% damage taken on the enemies from it. And that pretty much should sum up the skills. Let's move on to the Legendarium. In the Legendarium, it's important to have the Woods Beast sandals alongside the Lil General and one more item. So Maelstrom Cudgel, the Coral Cudgel does this effect to Maelstrom. Do you see how it's moving? Okay, I need to take more wounds, just a moment. So do you see how the storm is moving alongside with us? And I want to stack this with this. This is why the Coral Cudgel is the suggested item, but there are options. There are definitely options. First of all, Showman, always a good setup on a build that uses Powder Keg. Another one, as I mentioned, Shark Blade, so you have 10 stacks of Treachery rather than 5. Very good choice as well. If you decide to use Blunderbuss instead of Maelstrom, Fortune Spire is a good choice. You shouldn't underestimate that one. Obviously, Blunderbuss is an easy mode. Instead of using Maelstrom, using Blunderbuss makes the build easy mode. It makes it into an entirely different build. And over there, using Fortune Spire would not be a bad choice at all. It would be a great choice. There are some other options, like if you want to do some farming, you might want to put Winterweave Cuirass, which is a nice item. Would give you some decent gear work. To be precise, it's gonna give you 20, because if you don't wear 3 pieces, it's gonna be 20. For this build, we're not wearing 3 pieces Winterweave, so 20% gear work is enough. When you consider that playing on Ridiculous already gives you 50, already gives you another, I think 20. Oh, I forgot the exact amount. Let me quickly... where does it say? I can't check it right now, but I think it was 20. 20 from Ridiculous, 20 from that. And if you go into a 50% gear work map, that's 90 out of the blue, without considering things like the Tree of Work. And 100 is the limit. So the Winterweave Cuirass is pretty solid. So yeah, there are those options, and they're not bad. They're not terrible. And one of the setups was actually using Broadside that you saw. In this case, you might want to test the Big Fish. I've never tested the Big Fish because it seems like an item that's super hard to get. At least I'm very unlucky and I can't get it. So I can't tell you if it works or not, but it's worth testing if you're using Broadside, if you're using that one setup there. Obviously, the setups that are not using basic attack don't need Double Cross, and Double Cross is a passive only skill in those setups. Which means you're also not using blades for cutting, and you're not using the basic attack, which means you have 2 extra slots. Meaning, in the setups with basic attack, even if you have no points in Dread Banner, you would put the Dread Banner there, and you would put probably Powder Keg, not Powder Keg, Broadside as a filler instead of your basic attack. That would be in the thing. You might want to move this there, put this here, and then over here put the Dread Banner. For those setups that basic attack is not a part of the setup. And now let's talk pet skills. This is what I'm using. Deadlier Strikes, Battle Cry, Zoomies, Healing Friendship. Healing Friendship is great. Battle Cry, extra damage, amazing. Deadlier Strikes alongside the Woods Beast Boots, which are in the Legendarium for this setup, give you a total of 40% crit chance, which is the limit, which is the cap. So you're already capped by using this alongside the boots. And zoomies. Why zoomies? Zoomies gives the pet attack speed and movement speed. We want the attack speed. Attack speed synergizes well with Token of Invigoration, so it can trigger this cooldown reduction more often, and with Drat Neckband, so it can trigger the healing more often. More about that in the next segment. And here we are at the gear segment. So let's talk about the gear. Let's talk about the items I suggest using. First I'm gonna list all the items, which would be Frostwall alongside the Glacier Edge. In this setup it must be a Glacier Edge if you're going for basic attacks. If you're not going for a basic attacks build, you could do a North Mace as well. Then you want 3 pieces of the Commodore set, and the best suggestion would be Commodore Jacket, Commodore Cape, and one more, which ideally would be the Powder on. Then you want 3 pieces of Ancient Ember, which would be the boots, must have the boots in the setup, the gloves and the pants. You could rework some things, but that means you would have to mess around with the Legendarium, and this is the most optimal setup. Ideally I would have had the Ancient Ember shoulders, but that means if you have the Ancient Ember shoulders you have to use Commodore gloves, and if you're using Commodore gloves that means you would have to swap the Legendarium the Commodore shoulders, but that's not a bad setup. You can do that. Put Commodore Powderons here, remove the Coral Cudgel, keep the Woodsby Sandals and the Lil General, use Commodore Gloves and use Ancient Ember Shoulders, and that's gonna give you some shrine effects whenever you use Dance of Death. And since we can use 2 Dance of Death back to back by using Dance of Death, then Imbue Relic and another Dance of Death, that's gonna be nice. That will be a nice alternative. Then you want Token of Invigoration, Token of Rapid Bartering, Drat Neckband. Now before you move on, this is what the Glacier's Edge looks like, this is what the Frostwall looks like, and this is what the North Mace looks like. I've got my gear remodeled, so it looks well, so it looks like a Countess, Countess Dracula in a way, a Blood Drinker setup, skulls and red and black. But yeah, let's talk about the suggested stats. Token of Invigoration is there to refresh our pet cooldowns, so we can use the healing of the pet and the battle cry more often. Drat Neckband is there so that the more the pet hits, the more it heals us and itself. Token of Rapid Bartering is optional. I like it because it sends the pet back to sell items or buy potions in 16 seconds rather than 2 minutes. So it's amazing. Now let's talk about stats on those. You want this thing, faster cooldown for packed active skills on all 3 of them. And you want the same thing on the socket here and here, which means 1, 2, 3, then 2 sockets, 4, 5. This cannot get a socket for cooldown, so for this socket whatever. That means 5 times faster cooldown for pet. And then you want attack speed. Instead of my crit chance here, you want pet attack speed. You want pet attack speed here, pet attack speed here. That means 3 times pet attack speed, 5 times pet attack, pet cooldown, active skills reduction, and whatever else you want to put in the socket here. Now for the Glacier's Edge you would want, it always comes with ice damage at the top. Keep in mind it always has ice damage. You would want something nice in the middle. And you would want a socket. And in the socket, if you put ice damage, great. You don't have to put ice unless you're stacking ice damage % from items. But this is where you get the best chance to get flat damage. See, this one is 1 flat damage out of 5. This one is 2 flat damages out of 6, which is 33% chance to get that flat damage. This is 1 flat damage out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Obviously not great. So you want to roll for this one for flat damage. In fact, they've removed the electric flat damage, which is very strange. But okay. This is what you want to roll for, and they seem to have removed, oh no, they haven't, the physical is still there, but yeah, this is the one you want to roll, and it can give you ice or fire. You want that in the socket. Then in the middle you want something that gives you flat damage. I cannot show you right now, but let me just open a different weapon. and that will show you what I mean. See this one, how it has fire damage in the middle? Something like that is what you want, and ideally you would get it 2 times, like this one. See, this one has electric and physical damage in the middle, and if it had a socket and you put some more flat damage, it would have been great. So this is what you're aiming for. Maybe 2 flat damages and then crit damage. If you can get 3 flat damages, I've never seen a legendary item with 3 flat damages in the middle. Not sure if it's even possible, but that's gonna be the best choice. But 2 flat damages and crit damage is not bad. 2 flat damages and extra damage to Drain or extra damage to Powder Keg will not be terrible. It will be an okay choice. I would stay away from crit chance. It seems like a waste. I would stay away from chance to bleed. You can get that in the shield, as I mentioned. It's better to get it in the shield. I would stay away from some of the other things. Immobilize, stun, crit chance versus X bleeding, stunt, etc. targets. Just go for flat damage and crit damage as your priorities, and maybe plus 3 levels to Drain or plus 3 levels to Powder Keg. I would suggest Powder Keg there though. Now for the shield you want a lot of defense, 9-10,000 at the top, around 14-15 chance to block, and then you want as much regular defense, meaning physical, not electric, not fire, not poison defense, as much regular defense as you can in the slots. Or a mixture of physical and elemental defense, and then in the socket you want the chance to bleed that I showed you. Now over here you want plus 3 levels to Drain or plus 3 levels to Powder Keg, ideally Powder Keg. And the rest would be a Relic Energy generation minus Relic Energy cost. It will be great. You can get Relic Energy generation and minus Relic Energy cost here as well, and then get as much defense in every single piece of equipment as possible. Now let's talk damage. Something like this is what you want for the shoulder. Defense at the top, Powder Keg damage %, bonus crit damage, and defense in the socket. Now this same Powder Keg damage can roll here and here, and you want it. You want Powder Keg damage here, you want Powder Keg damage here. If you decide to go for a Plunderbuss version, then go for Plunderbuss damage in those 3 places, or a mixture, whatever you can get. But since we're not using Plunderbuss and I don't want to stack Maelstrom damage, I'm stacking Powder Keg damage. It's what's gonna carry the build. So the second best thing in the chest and legs is flat damage, if it still can roll. I haven't seen one in a long time, so maybe they've removed it. After that is crit damage in the chest. This cannot get crit damage, it can get crit chance, and you don't want crit chance, but you can get crit damage here. And then the next after that would be % ice damage. Why ice? Because Glacier Sedge always comes with 4000 something at least ice damage at level 60. This one's actually got close to 5000 at the top, so it will be the highest amount of damage you get. See over here, different amount of damages will get added, and which one is the highest, that's the one you want to stack % damage from. So you can get % ice damage here, here, and here, but on the boots the highest priority goes to crit damage. Then comes the thing that gives you % ice damage. And if you're stacking % chance to block and evasion, keep in mind those cap at 40%. 40% evasion, 40% chance to block. I think that's around 36% chance to get hit or something like that, roughly. And this pretty much sums up the rows. Obviously try to get as much defense as possible. Ideally you want this one here, where I have 51 physical, to be 60%. And then after that the other ones, the elemental ones, could be like 65 or higher. And that should sum up the affixes on the items. If I've missed something, it will be on my website. Next, you will see some more footage of the build in action. Here's the part of the video where I show you more footage of the build and I talk about rotations. This build can offer a various number of rotations depending on how you want to go on about it. Some people would want to start with Maelstrom get it rolling, get the bonus for the Commodore Powdrons, and then maybe do black spot on an enemy that's a high priority target. And then maybe if your relic energy is full, do Dance of Death, then Imbue Relic, then Dance of Death, then start draining, start using Powder Kegs at the same time. And after Powder Keg and drains have been done, you can start doing basic attacks in between, and when double cross is ready, do double cross. Obviously, if drain is not drain. Obviously, if Dance of Death is not ready to use, you would go on a little bit differently about it. Yeah, you can probably start again with Maelstrom, but I would probably start with Black Spot, then Maelstrom, then I would do Imbue Relic, and then I would do Dance of Death. Then I would start with 1 or 2 drains, and not all of them, just 1 or 2, so you're gaining energy as you're doing the other skills. And then would be the Powder Kegs, the basic attacks, double cross, more drains, and then start with repeating some of the skills. Probably Black Spot would be ready by this time to reuse, maybe another Keg would be ready. But in general, yeah, I really love keeping Dance of Death ready. And when I encounter a champion group or a boss fight, I can use Dance of Death, Imbue Relic, Dance of Death, this combination, so I can have those 8 spinning blades. You don't have to do it, and in most of the cases you see it works pretty fine if you don't save it up and just use it whenever it's ready. But I hope you like those rotation versions. To get notified when I upload more content for this game or other games like this one, which would be wooters of all varieties, isometric, third-person ARPGs, wooter shooters and all sorts of wooters like that, you could subscribe to my channel and hit that bell button to not miss out on my content updates. And optionally, you can even join as a member of the Struck Club on YouTube as a channel member to get access to exclusive perks such as special emotes custom made by me, special badges custom made by me that represents how many months you have been a member for, as well as opt-in of editing tutorials that I can give for Photoshop, Adobe Premiere, as well as shoutouts and things like that. And I would like to use this part of the video to thank all my YouTube members and Twitch subscribers. Thank you for supporting the channel and keeping me going. Thank you also for watching this video, everyone. Keep it cool, Struck Club. Until next time, and goodbye.